In a foggy London manor, a wealthy lord is found dead, shot in a locked room with no clues. Two legendary detectives, Sherlock Holmes, master of logic, and Hercule Poirot, genius of human nature, see the mysterious challenge to solve the crime. As they clash, uncovering secret letters, a tampered latch, and a web of betrayal, their rivalry turns to teamwork. A cunning killer, a hidden spy plot, and a shadowy admirer pull them into a thrilling race for truth. Will their combined brilliance crack the case, or will the murderer escape? The answer lies in a heart-pounding showdown that proves justice needs both mind and heart. Chapter 1. The challenge issued. London buzzed with life in the 1920s. Its foggy streets alive with horse-drawn carriages and newfangled motor cars. Gas lamps flickered, casting shadows on cobblestones. In the heart of the city, two men, worlds apart in style but matched in genius, received a letter that would spark a battle of wits. At 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes sat in his armchair, pipe in hand, smoke curling like a lazy snake. The room smelled of tobacco and old books. Dr. John Watson, his loyal friend, read the morning paper by the fire. The clock ticked loudly, its rhythm steady, like Holmes' mind at work. A knock broke the quiet. Mrs. Hudson, their landlady, entered with a silver tray. "Letter for you, Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice soft but curious. "Came by special courier. Looks important." Holmes took the envelope, his long fingers moving like a piano. The paper was thick, expensive, sealed with red wax. No name, no address, just a crest, a lion, and a rose. He sliced it open with a letter opener, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. The message inside was typed, crisp and bold. "Read it, Watson," Holmes said, handing it over without a glance. His voice was calm, but his fingers tapped the armrest, a sign his brain was already racing. Watson cleared his throat and read aloud, "To Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the greatest detective in England, a challenge awaits. Lord Reginald Blackwood, master of Blackwood Manor, was found dead in his locked study last night. The police are stumped. Solve this crime and prove your legend. But know this, another claims your crown. Meet at the manor tomorrow, 9 a.m. The world will watch." Signed, an admirer of genius. Holmes' lips twitched, almost a smile. "Another claims my crown. Intriguing." He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "A locked room murder, Watson. No footprints, no witnesses. Yet someone dares to challenge me. Who's this rival, I wonder?" Watson frowned, folding the letter. "Sounds like a trap, or a prank. Why the secrecy? And who's this admirer?" "No trap," Holmes said, standing. He paced, his dressing gown swishing. "A prank wouldn't use such fine paper, or know of Blackwood's death before the papers. This is a game, Watson, and I intend to win." Across town, in a neat apartment on Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sipped hot chocolate, his mustache perfectly trimmed. The room was tidy, every cushion in place, every book aligned. Captain Arthur Hastings, his friend, lounged on a sofa, flipping through a magazine. The morning sun streamed through lace curtains, warming the oak floor. A sharp knock made Hastings jump. "Who's that, at this hour?" he muttered, setting the magazine down. Poirot raised a hand, calm as ever. "Patience, mon ami." The world does not disturb Hercule Poirot without reason. He opened the door to find a young boy, cap low, holding an envelope. Poirot tipped him a coin, and the boy scampered off. The envelope matched Holmes. Same wax seal, same crest. Poirot's small hands held it like a treasure. He opened it with care, as if it were a rare book. The typed message was identical, word for word, challenging him to solve Lord Blackwood's murder and hinting at a rival. "Hastings, listen." Poirot's green eyes sparkled. He read the letter in his crisp Belgian accent, each word precise. "To Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the mind unmatched, a challenge awaits." When he finished, he tapped the paper against his chin. "This is no ordinary case. A locked study, a dead lord, and another who thinks he can outshine Poirot. Non, this will not do." Hastings leaned forward, puzzled. "Another detective? Who dared challenge you? You've solved cases Scotland Yard couldn't touch." Poirot smiled, stroking his mustache. "Perhaps, Hastings, but the world is full of clever men. This admirer knows how to stir the pot. A locked room, arrival it, is a puzzle for the little gray cells." He stood, adjusting his waistcoat. "We go to Blackwood Manor. I must meet this challenger and solve this crime." By evening, word of Lord Blackwood's death spread. Newspapers screamed headlines, "Aristocrat slain in locked room." The public buzzed, hungry for answers. Blackwood, a wealthy man with ties to the government, was no small figure. His manor, an hour from London, was a fortress of stone and secrets. The police, led by Inspector Lestrade, found no clues and no broken locks, no signs of a struggle, just a body, a bullet, and a mystery. Holmes and Watson took a late train, the carriage rattling through the misty countryside. Holmes stared out the window, his face like carved marble. "The facts, Watson," he said, lighting his pipe. "Blackwood was shot at close range, yet the door was locked from the inside. The key was in his pocket. No one heard the shot. Curious, don't you think?" Watson nodded, scribbling notes. "Impossible. Almost. Suicide." Holmes snorted. "A man like Blackwood doesn't end his own life in a locked room with no note. No, this is murder, clever, calculated. The question is how." Meanwhile, Poirot and Hastings traveled by car, the engine humming softly. Poirot sat upright, hands folded, his mind worried. "Hastings, consider the human heart," he said. "A locked room is not just a puzzle of keys and bolts. It is a puzzle of motives. Who wanted Blackwood dead? A wife, a rival, a friend?" Hastings chuckled. "You and your motives. Can't it just be a burglar?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A burglar who leaves no trace, locks the door, and takes nothing. Nan, mon ami, this is personal. And I, Poirot, will uncover the truth." The next morning, Blackwood Manor loomed under a gray sky, its towers like silent guards. Ivy clung to its walls, and tall windows glinted coldly. Holmes and Watson arrived first, stepping from a cab. Holmes' sharp eyes scanned the ground's gravel paths, trimmed hedges, a fountain spitting water. "Every detail matters, Watson," he said, noting a scuff on the path. "The ground tells stories the police miss." Minutes later, Poirot's car pulled up. He stepped out, dapper in a tailored suit, his cane tapping the ground. Hastings followed, looking slightly out of place in the grand setting. The two detectives locked eyes across the courtyard. Holmes raised an eyebrow. Poirot bowed slightly. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I presume," Poirot said, his voice smooth as silk. Holmes nodded, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Poirot, I've heard of your theatrical methods." Poirot's mustache twitched. "An eye of your microscope and measuring tape. But it is the mind, monsieur, that solves crimes." Watson and Hastings exchanged glances, sensing the tension. Inspector Lestrade appeared, looking frazzled. "Gentlemen," he said, "I don't know why you're both here, but we need answers. Blackwood's death is a scandal. The press is hounding us. Lead us to the scene," Holmes said, his tone clipped. "We, the scene," Poirot echoed, "but also the people. I wish to meet the household." Lestrade sighed. "Follow me." Inside, the manor was a maze of polished wood and chandeliers. Portraits of stern Blackwoods stared down. The study, where the murder happened, was sealed. Lestrade unlocked it, revealing a large room with a mahogany desk, bookshelves, and a single window locked tight. A chalk outline marked where Blackwood's body lay, near a rug stained dark. Holmes knelt, examining the floor. No scratches on the lock, no signs of forced entry. He sniffed the air. Cigar smoke, faint. Not Blackwood's brandished pipe is on the desk. Poirot, meanwhile, studied the room's layout. The chair, it is turned toward the door. He expected someone. He tapped his temple. The little gray cells, they ask. Who was he waiting for? Watson whispered to Hastings. "They're like chalk and cheese, aren't they?" Hastings grinned. "Let's see who cracks it first." As the detectives worked, the household gathered in the drawing room. Lady Blackwood, pale and composed. The butler, stiff and nervous. A diplomat, sweating despite the chill. And a nephew, eyes darting, Each held secrets, and both Holmes and Poirot knew it. Holmes pulled Watson aside. "This is no ordinary case. The letter, the rivalets attest. I'll solve it before this Belgian dandy." Poirot, overhearing, smiled. "Monsieur Holmes, it is not speed that wins, but truth. My methods will triumph." The stage was set. Two minds, two styles, one crime. The manor's walls seemed to hum with anticipation. Who would solve the mystery first? Holmes, with his eagle-eyed logic, or Poirot, with his knack for human nature? The answer lay hidden, waiting to be uncovered. As the day unfolded, the detectives agreed to work separately, each chasing clues in their own way. Holmes scoured the grounds, measuring distances, collecting ash. Poirot sat with the maid, asking gentle questions, watching her hands tremble. The rivalry was fierce, but beneath it, a grudging respect flickered. Both knew this case was bigger than pride. The chapter closed with the sun setting, casting long shadows over Blackwood Manor. Holmes stood by the fountain, lost in thought. Poirot sipped tea in the parlor, his eyes distant. The letters from the admirer lay heavy on their minds, a puzzle within a puzzle. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Chapter 2. The crime scene. The morning mist clung to Blackwood Manor like a shroud, its stone walls cold and unyielding. The air smelled of damp earth and roses from the garden. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson stood outside the manor's heavy oak doors, waiting for Inspector Lestrade. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings arrived moments later, the Belgian detective stepping from his car with a precise flick of his cane. The two detectives exchanged a nod, sharp and formal, their rivalry simmering under the surface. Lestrade, looking more tired than usual, led them inside. "The study's this way," he said, his boots echoing on the marble floor. "No one's touched it since last night." Blackwood was found at his desk, shot through the chest, door locked, key in his pocket, windows bolted. "It's a proper mystery." Holmes' eyes narrowed, already scanning the hallway portraits. A faded rug, a vase with wilting lilies. "No forced entry?" he asked, voice low. "None," Lestrade replied. "Clean as a whistle." Poirot adjusted his gloves, his mustache twitching. "And the people, Inspector, who was in the house?" "Lady Blackwood, the butler, a maid, a cook, the nephew, and a guest, a diplomat from France. They're all waiting in the drawing room." Bon Poirot said. "The heart of a crime lies in the hearts of those near it." Holmes snorted, softly, barely audible. Watson caught it and hid a grin. Hastings raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The study door creaked open, revealing a grand room frozen in time. A mahogany desk sat under a tall window, its curtains drawn. Bookshelves lined the walls, stuffed with leather-bound volumes. A pipe rested on the desk, next to an inkpot and scattered papers. The chalk outline of Lord Blackwood's body marked the rug, a dark stain beneath it. The air held a faint whiff of something sharp, gunpowder, perhaps, or something else. Holmes moved first, his long frame bending low. He crawled across the floor, eyes inches from the rug. "Watson, note this," he said, pointing to a scuff. Near the desk, a shoe, size 9, narrow heel. "Not Blackwood's. His boots are by the door, size 10. He sniffed the air, then the desk. Cigar smoke, Cuban, not fresh. Blackwood smoked a pipe. Someone else was here." Watson scribbled in his notebook, nodding. "A visitor, then." "Likely," Holmes said. He examined the window latch, his fingers tracing the metal. Scratches, faint but deliberate. "Someone tampered with this, though it's bolted now." He pulled a magnifying glass from his coat, studying the lock. Clever work, almost invisible. Poirot, meanwhile, stood still, his hands clasped. Behind his back, he didn't touch the desk or floor. Instead, his green eyes roamed the room, slow and steady. "The chair, it faces the door," he murmured. Monsieur Blackwood was waiting for someone. He was not surprised. He stepped to the desk, noting a single pen out of place in its holder. A man of order, yet this pen is askew. A struggle, or a moment of fear. Hastings leaned close. "What's that mean, Poirot?" "It means, mon ami, that the mind of the victim speaks as loudly as the clues on the floor. Poirot's voice was soft but firm. He glanced at Holmes, who was now measuring the distance between the desk and the door. "Monsieur Holmes, do you not find the human element illuminating?" Holmes didn't look up. "The human element is unreliable. Facts, marks, smells, measurement so's don't lie." He tapped the window frame. This latch was forced, then reset. A tool, small and precise, was used. Lestrade scratched his head. "So, someone broke in, or made it look that way," Holmes said, standing. He pocketed a speck of dust from the sill. "I'll need my microscope for this." Poirot smiled, faintly. A microscope for dust, but not for motives. Curious, he turned to Lestrade. "I wish to speak with the maid. She was the first to find the body." "We," Lestrade nodded. "Mary, young girl. She's shaken up naturellement," Poirot said. Fear reveals truth. The group split. Holmes and Watson stayed in the study, Holmes now examining a book on the shelf, slightly out of line. "This was moved," he muttered. "A history of naval warfare. Odd choice for a late-night read." He flipped it open, finding a page dog-eared. A code, perhaps. Or a message. Watson peered over his shoulder. "You think the killer left it? Or Blackwood marked it himself?" Holmes said. He was a man of secrets, government contracts, political ties. "This book may hold a clue." Outside, Poirot and Hastings sat in the parlor, a cozy room with velvet chairs and a crackling fire. Mary, the maid, stood before them, twisting her apron. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. "Mademoiselle Mary," Poirot began, his voice gentle, like a kind uncle. "Tell me, what did you see last night?" Mary sniffled. I brought tea to the master at 9. He was at his desk, writing. He looked worried, sir, not himself. I left the tray and went to bed. Then, at midnight, I heard a noise, a thud, like something fell. I ran to the study, but the door was locked. I called the butler, Mr. Graves. He broke the door down, and we found him." Her voice broke. Poirot leaned forward, watching her closely. "This thud, it was loud. Not too loud, sir, like a book dropping. And Monsieur Blackwood, did he speak to anyone that evening?" Mary hesitated, her fingers tightening on her apron. I saw the nephew, Mr. Thomas, near the study earlier. He looked angry. And the diplomat, Monsieur Dubois, was pacing the hall." Poirot nodded, his eyes kind but sharp. "Merci, Mary, you are most helpful." As Mary left, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, isn't she?" "Oui," Poirot said. "Her hands, they betray her. She knows more than she says. But we will not push yet." Back in the study, Holmes found a new clue, a thread, dark blue, caught on a splinter under the desk. "Not from Blackwood's suit," he said, holding it to the light. "Wool, finely woven, expensive. The diplomat, perhaps." His coat was blue. Watson frowned, but the door was locked. "How'd they get in?" "That," Holmes said, "is the heart of it. A locked room is only as secure as its weakest point." By noon, the detectives regrouped in the drawing room, where the suspects waited. Lady Blackwood sat straight, her black dress stark against her pale skin. The butler, Graves, stood rigid, eyes down. Thomas, the nephew, slouched, his jaw tight. Monsieur Dubois, the diplomat, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. The cook and maid hovered in the background, nervous. Lestrade spoke first. "We've got nothing solid. No fingerprints, no weapon, just a bullet in Blackwood's chest." Holmes stepped forward, his voice cool. "The window latch was tampered with. A tool was used, likely a wire or pick. The killer entered, shot Blackwood, and reset the latch to cover their tracks." Poirot raised a hand. "Possible, but consider. The chair faced the door. Blackwood knew his killer. This was no stranger's work. The maid saw the nephew and diplomat near the study. Their motives, they must be explored." Holmes' eyes flicked to Poirot, a spark of irritation. "Motives are guesses. The thread I found, blue wool, points to someone in this room. Facts, Monsieur Poirot, not feelings." Poirot's smile was tight, and yet Monsieur Holmes, a thread without a heart is just a thread. Why was Blackwood afraid? That is the question. The suspects shifted, uneasy. Lady Blackwood's lips thinned. Thomas glared at the floor. Dubois coughed, his handkerchief fluttering. Lestrade groaned. You two bickering won't help. Work together, or we're sunk. Holmes and Poirot exchanged a look, neither willing to yield. I work alone, Holmes said. As do I, Poirot added, but for truth, not pride. The room fell silent, tension thick as the fog outside. The clues were scattered: a scuffed shoe, a tampered latch, a misplaced book, a nervous maid. Each detective saw the puzzle differently. Holmes through facts, Poirot through people. The manor held its secrets tight, but the truth was there, waiting. As the chapter ended, Holmes stood by the window, sketching the latch in his mind. Poirot sat with a cup of tea, watching the suspects' faces. The rivalry burned, but the case was bigger than either man. The admirer's challenge hung over them, a shadow daring them to prove who was better. Chapter 3. The suspects and their secrets. The afternoon sun barely pierced the heavy clouds over Blackwood Manor, casting dim light through the drawing-room's tall windows. The air was thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break. Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot stood on opposite sides of the room, each watching the suspects with sharp eyes. Dr. Watson leaned against a wall, notebook in hand. Captain Hastings sat near Poirot, trying to look calm but fidgeting with his tie. The suspects: Lady Blackwood, the butler Graves, the nephew Thomas, the diplomat Monsieur Dubois, and the hovering maid and cook sat or stood, each face hiding something. Holmes spoke first, his voice cutting through the silence. The facts point to someone in this room. A blue wool thread, found under the desk, matches none of Blackwood's clothes. Monsieur Dubois, your coat is blue, finely woven. Care to explain? Dubois, a short man with a sweaty brow, stammered. My coat, I was nowhere near the study. I was in my room, reading. His handkerchief fluttered like a trapped bird. Holmes' eyes narrowed. Yet the maid saw you pacing the hall at 9, conveniently close to the crime. Poirot raised a hand, his voice smooth. Monsieur Holmes, a thread is but a whisper of truth. Let us consider the nephew, Thomas. Mademoiselle Mary saw him near the study, angry. Why so, Monsieur Thomas? Thomas, a lanky young man with dark eyes, shifted in his chair. I argued with my uncle. Yes, he cut me out of his will. Said I was a disgrace, but I didn't kill him. His voice cracked, too loud for the quiet room. Lady Blackwood, pale as a ghost, in her black dress, spoke softly. Thomas is troubled, but no murderer. My husband had enemies, business rivals, political foes. Look there, not at my family. Poirot's mustache twitched. Madame, your calm is admirable. Yet your eyes, they flicker when you speak of enemies. Who do you protect? Lady Blackwood's lips tightened, but she said nothing. The butler Graves cleared his throat. If I may, sirs, Lord Blackwood was uneasy that night. He asked me to lock all doors early, said someone might come uninvited. Holmes pounced. Someone specific. A name. Graves shook his head. He didn't say, sir, just, be vigilant. Watson scribbled, whispering to Holmes. That's new. A threat he expected. Holmes nodded, his mind racing. He stepped to the fireplace, examining the mantel. A faint smudge of ash caught his eye, not from the fire, but finer, like cigar ash. The cigar smoke I smelled in the study, he said. Someone here smokes Cubans. Not Blackwood. His pipe was his only vice. Dubois coughed. I smoke cigars, but I was in my room. So you keep saying, Holmes replied, his tone sharp as a blade. Poirot, meanwhile, watched the maid, Mary, who stood by the door, her apron twisted in her hands. Mademoiselle, he called gently, you are nervous. Why? Is there more you saw? Mary's eyes darted to Lady Blackwood, then down. No, sir. Just, it's awful, finding the master like that. Poirot smiled, kind but piercing. Your hands, they tell a story. You twist your apron when you speak of the study. What do you hide? Mary flushed, stepping back. Nothing, sir. I swear. Hastings leaned close to Poirot. She's scared stiff. Thinks she's lying. Not lying, mon ami, Poirot whispered. Protecting someone, or afraid of them. The room grew quiet, each suspect glancing at the others. Inspector Lestrade, pacing by the window, groaned. This is getting us nowhere. We need evidence, not guesses. Holmes shot him a look. Evidence is here, Lestrade. The thread, the ash, the scuffed shoe mark in the study. They point to a careful plan. He turned to Thomas. Your boot size 9, narrow heel. They matched a mark I found. Thomas stood, fists clenched. You're barking up the wrong tree. I wasn't in the study. Then where were you? At midnight. Holmes pressed. Thomas hesitated, then muttered, in the garden. Alone, alone, Holmes said, eyebrow raised. No one to confirm that. Poirot stepped forward, his cane tapping softly. Monsieur Thomas, an argument with your uncle, a cut will, a midnight walk. These are not crimes, but they are shadows. Tell me, what did you argue about? Thomas glared. He said I'd never amount to anything. Called me a leech. I stormed out. That's all. Poirot nodded, his eyes soft but sharp. And yet, you returned to the garden, near the study window. Why? Thomas froze, then sat, silent. Lady Blackwood touched his arm, her face unreadable. Holmes turned to the window, his mind on the latch he'd examined. The window was tampered with, but not broken. The killer knew the manor's weaknesses. An outsider, possible, but an insider is more likely. He glanced at Graves. You locked the doors early. Did you check the windows? Graves nodded, stiffly. All secure, sir. Yet one wasn't, Holmes said. The study window shows signs of a wire tool. Someone skilled got in or out. Poirot tilted his head. Or, Monsieur Holmes, someone made it look tampered with. A distraction, perhaps. The little gray cells suggest the killer was already inside, trusted by Blackwood. Holmes' lips twitched, almost a smile. A theory, not a fact. A theory is a seed, Monsieur Poirot replied. It grows with truth. Watson and Hastings exchanged glances, half amused, half exasperated. They're like cats circling a mouse, Hastings whispered. More like two hounds on a scent, Watson replied. Lestrade clapped his hands. Enough. I'm splitting you up. Holmes, take the grounds. Poirot, question the staff. We meet at dusk with answers. Holmes nodded, already heading outside. He knelt by the study window, examining the gravel path. A footprint, faint but clear, matched the size 9 mark inside. The nephew's boots, he muttered to Watson. He was here, outside the window. But the latch was reset from inside. How? Watson frowned. A partner. Someone inside helped him. Perhaps, Holmes said, scraping dirt from the footprint. Or a trick to mislead us. He pocketed the sample, his eyes scanning the garden. A crushed flower caught his attention recent, near the path. Someone stood here, watching, not tall shorter than Thomas. Dubois, maybe. Inside, Poirot sat with the cook, Mrs. Ellis, in the kitchen. The room smelled of bread and herbs, a stark contrast to the manor's gloom. Mrs. Ellis, a stout woman with flour-dusted hands, was less nervous than Mary but guarded. Madame Ellis, Poirot began, his voice warm. You knew Lord Blackwood well. Did he have enemies in this house? Mrs. Ellis hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. He was strict, sir. Not cruel, but cold. Lady Blackwood, she put up with a lot. His temper, his secrets. And that nephew, always arguing. Poirot leaned closer. Secrets? Of what kind? She glanced at the door, lowering her voice. He met with strange men business types, late at night. Letters came, sealed with a lion and rose. He burned them after reading. Poirot's eyes gleamed, a lion and rose, like the letter I received. Most interesting, Hastings scribbled notes, whispering. That's the same seal. The admirer knew Blackwood. We, Poirot said. This is no simple murder. There is a web, and we are in it. By dusk, the detectives reconvened in the drawing room. Holmes held a small vial of dirt and a crushed petal. The footprint outside matches Thomas' boots. He was at the window. And this flower crushed by someone shorter, likely Dubois. They're hiding something. Poirot nodded, his face calm but alert. The cook speaks of secret letters, marked with a lion and rose, the same as our challenge. Blackwood was entangled in something larger, perhaps espionage, perhaps betrayal. Lestrade rubbed his temples. Espionage, now you're reaching. We've got a dead man, not a spy novel. Holmes and Poirot locked eyes, a spark of understanding passing between them. The facts align, Holmes said. The thread, the footprint, the ash, they point to a plan. And the hearts, Poirot added, they point to motive. Lady Blackwood protects someone. Mary fears someone. Thomas hides his anger. Dubois sweats too much. The suspects watched, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. The manor's shadows grew longer, the air heavier. Holmes and Poirot, though rivals, sensed the same truth. The clues were piling up, but the puzzle was far from solved. The admirers' challenge loomed, daring them to dig deeper. As night fell, Holmes stood by the fire, his mind on footprints and latches. Poirot sipped tea, thinking of nervous hands and secret letters. The suspects and their secrets swirled around them, each clue a step closer to the truth, or a trap. Chapter 4. The twist of fog rolled thick over London, wrapping Blackwood Manor in a gray veil as night fell. Inside, the air buzzed with secrets, each suspect a thread in a tangled web. Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, though rivals, felt the case growing bigger than their contest. The murder of Lord Blackwood was no simple crime, and the mysterious admirer who challenged them knew more than they let on. Holmes stood in the garden, his lantern casting a soft glow on the gravel path. Dr. Watson shivered beside him, collar up against the damp. "This fog's like pea soup," Watson muttered, squinting at the study window. "Find anything new?" Holmes knelt, his magnifying glass hovering over a fresh clue, a tiny scrap of paper caught in a rosebush near the window. "This," he said, holding it to the light. The paper was torn, but a few typed words showed. "Meet at midnight. Plan secure." The ink matched the admirer's letter. "It's from our challenger," Holmes said, his voice sharp. "They were here, or someone they know was." Watson frowned. "Part of a note Blackwood received, or left by the killer." Holmes pocketed the scrap. "Either way, it's deliberate. The window latch, the footprint, now they're pieces of a larger game." He scanned the path, spotting a faint wheel mark, like from a bicycle. Someone left in a hurry. Not Thomas's boots, don't match this. Across the manor, in the cozy parlor, Poirot sat with Captain Hastings, a fire crackling nearby. He held a small notebook, jotting thoughts with a neat hand. "The cook's words, Hastings," he said, "they nag at me. Letters with a lion, and rose, burned by Blackwood. Secrets he kept from even his wife. This is no mere family feud." Hastings nodded, sipping tea. "And Mary, the maid, she's scared of someone. Lady Blackwood, maybe, or Dubois. He's jumpy as a cat." Poirot's eyes gleamed. But fear is a mirror. It shows what lies beneath. I must speak to someone overlooked." He stood, cane in hand. "The gardener, Monsieur Jenkins. He sees all, yet says little." They found Jenkins outside, raking leaves in the fading light. He was old, wiry, with hands like tree bark. Poirot approached, his voice warm. "Monsieur Jenkins, you tend these grounds with care. Did you see anything the night Lord Blackwood died?" Jenkins paused, leaning on his rake. "I don't pry, sir, but I saw a man in the garden, late, not tall, wearing a dark coat. He stood by the study window, then left on a bicycle. Fast, like he was scared." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A bicycle, you say? And this man, did he carry anything?" "A bag, small, slung over his shoulder," Jenkins said. "Didn't see his face. Fog was thick." Hastings whispered Dubois. "He's short, in that blue coat of his." "Perhaps," Poirot said. "But the heart, Hastings, why? Was he there? To kill, or to warn?" Back inside, Holmes and Watson joined Lestrade in the study. Holmes spread his clues on the desk. Blue thread, the cigar ash, the torn paper. The wheel mark outside suggests a bicycle, he said. A quick escape, planned in advance. The note fragment mentions a plan. This wasn't just murder, it's tied to something bigger. Lestrade rubbed his eyes. Bigger like what? Blackwood was rich, sure, but he was just a lord. Holmes' gaze was cold. He had government-ties trade deals, foreign contracts. That note suggests espionage. The killer, or their master, wanted something he knew. At that moment, Poirot and Hastings entered, catching the tail of Holmes' words. Espionage, Monsieur Holmes, Poirot said, eyebrow raised. The little gray cells agree. The gardener saw a man with a bicycle near the study, carrying a bag. A spy, perhaps, or a messenger. Holmes turned, surprised. A bicycle that matches my wheel mark. Your gardener's sharp for an old man. Poirot smiled thinly. He observes, as you do. But he sees people, not just marks. Lestrade groaned. So, what now? You're both chasing ghosts. We've got suspects here, in the house. Holmes and Poirot locked eyes, a spark of understanding cutting through their rivalry. The clues converge, Holmes said. The note, the bicycle, the cigar ash, they point to an outsider. But someone inside helped. We, Poirot said. The maid's fear, the cook's talk of secret letters. Someone in this house knew Blackwood's secrets and betrayed him. Watson looked between them. You're agreeing. That's a first, Hastings chuckled. Miracles happen, Watson. Lestrade clapped his hands. Right, let's search the house. Blackwood's safe, there might be more letters. They moved to the study, where a heavy iron safe sat behind a painting. Lestrade called the butler, Graves, who knew the combination. With a click, the safe opened, revealing a stack of papers and one sealed letter, marked with the lion and rose. Holmes snatched it, but Poirot raised a hand. Care, Monsieur Holmes, Poirot said. A letter like this is a trap or a treasure. Holmes slid it open, revealing a single sheet, typed and cryptic. Midnight, the plan proceeds. Deliver the documents or face ruin. The Crown watches. No signature, just the same Lion Andros seal. Holmes' eyes blazed. Documents. Blackwood was holding sensitive papers, likely government secrets. The killer wanted them. Poirot nodded. Or killed to keep them hidden. Notice the words. The Crown watches. A threat, or a code. Watson frowned. The Crown. You mean royalty. Or a code name, Holmes said. Espionage often hides behind such terms. Poirot tapped his cane. We must act, messieurs. If these documents are still here, they are in danger. And if they are gone, the killer may strike again. Lestrade looked pale. Strike again. You think there's another target? Possible, Holmes said, scanning the room. The bicycle man fled, but he left a note fragment. He's not done. Poirot turned to Hastings. We must watch the suspects tonight. Lady Blackwood, Thomas Dubois, they no more than they say. Holmes nodded. A rare agreement. And the grounds. If our cyclist returns, I'll catch him. Lestrade sighed. Fine, Holmes. You and Watson take the outside. Poirot, Hastings, watch the house. I'll guard the safe. As night deepened, the manor grew quiet, the fog pressing against the windows. Holmes and Watson patrolled the garden, lanterns low. Holmes' sharp eyes caught a glint of cigarette butt, fresh, near the rose bush. Not Cuban, he muttered. Our cyclist smokes cheap tobacco, a hired man, not a mastermind. Inside, Poirot and Hastings sat in the dark parlor, listening. Footsteps creaked above Lady Blackwood, pacing her room. Dubois' door opened, then closed quickly. Mary, the maid, hurried past, her face pale. She's terrified, Hastings whispered. We, Poirot, said. She knows who was at the window. We must protect her. Suddenly, a shout came from the garden. Watson's voice. Holmes there. Holmes sprinted toward, a shadow moving in the fog. Man, short, with a bag, pushing a bicycle. Stop, Holmes called, but the man vanished into the mist. Tires crunching gravel. Holmes returned, breathing hard. holding a dropped glove leather, worn, with a faint cigar smell. "He's real," Holmes said. "And he's close." Poirot met them at the door, his face grim. "Mary just confessed. She saw Dubois give a letter to a man outside before the murder. She didn't tell us, for fear of her life." Holmes held up the glove. "This man, he's the key. But he's not working alone." The detectives stood together, the fog swirling outside. The note, the glove, the bicycle, they pointed to a conspiracy. One Blackwood died for Holmes. Logic and Poirot's insight were aligning, their rivalry fading against a bigger threat. The admirer had set a trap, not just for Blackwood, but for them. As the chapter closed, Holmes clutched the glove, his mind racing through clues. Poirot stared into the fire, piecing together motives. The manor held its breath, the next move unclear. Was the cyclist a killer, a spy, or a pawn? The truth was close, but danger closer. Chapter 5. The confrontation. The morning sun broke through the fog, casting pale light over Blackwood Manor. The air was heavy with the scent of wet grass and tension. Inside the grand drawing room, Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot prepared for a showdown. The suspects, Lady Blackwood, Thomas the nephew, Monsieur Dubois, the butler Graves, and the maid Mary sat in a tense circle, their faces tight with fear or defiance. Dr. Watson stood by the door, notebook ready. Captain Hastings sat near Poirot, watching every move. Inspector Lestrade paced, his patience worn thin. Holmes stepped forward, his tall frame casting a long shadow. "We have the facts," he said, voice sharp as a knife. "A blue thread, a tempered window latch, a cigarette butt, and a glove left by a man on a bicycle. They point to a planned murder, tied to secrets." Lord Blackwood held. Poirot nodded, his cane tapping softly, and the heartsmith's shears. Fear in Mary's eyes, anger in Thomas, secrets in Lady Blackwood's silence. "A letter with a Lionandro's seal speaks of a plan and the crown. This is no simple crime," Lestrade groaned. "Get to it, both of you. Who killed Blackwood?" Holmes held up the glove, its leather worn and faintly smoky. "This belongs to the cyclist seen outside the study. Mary saw him with Dubois, passing a letter." Monsieur Dubois explained. Dubois, sweating, clutched his handkerchief. I know nothing of a glove. Yes, I met a man, but only to deliver a business note for Lord Blackwood. It was harmless." Holmes' eyes narrowed. "A note with a Lionandro's seal. The same as the one in the safe, mentioning documents and the crown." Dubois paled. I didn't read it. Blackwood asked me to deliver it. That's all." Poirot stepped closer, his voice smooth but firm. "Yet Mary saw fear in your eyes. Monsieur, you knew the man was dangerous. Why not speak?" Dubois stammered, then fell silent, his hands shaken. Holmes turned to Thomas. "Your boots match the footprint outside the study. You were there, at the window, the night Blackwood died. You argued with him, and he cut you from his will. A strong motive." Thomas jumped up, fists balled. "I didn't kill him. Yes, I was outside, but only to clear my head after our fight. I saw nothing." Poirot tilted his head. "Yet you hid this, Monsieur Thomas. Why? Guilt, or fear of the cyclist?" Thomas slumped, muttering, "I didn't want to look guilty. I heard a noise, saw a shadow, and ran." Lady Blackwood spoke, her voice cold. "My nephew is no killer. My husband had enemies, men in high places. Look to them, not us." Poirot's eyes locked on hers. "Madame, you protect someone. Your calm hides a storm. The cook spoke of your husband's secrets, letters he burned. Did you know of them?" Lady Blackwood's lips thinned, but she said nothing. Holmes paced, holding the torn note from the garden. "This fragment meet at midnight. Plan secure ties to the letter in the safe." Blackwood was part of a deal, likely espionage. The cyclist was a courier, but someone inside let him in. Poirot nodded. The chair in the study faced the door. Blackwood expected his killer. A trusted face, not a stranger. Lestrade snapped. "Enough theories. Name the killer." Holmes and Poirot exchanged a glance, a silent agreement forming. Holmes spoke first. "The evidence points to Thomas. His footprint, his motive, his presence at the window. But the latch was reset from inside, and the glove suggests another. Hand. Poirot raised a finger, and the heart points elsewhere. Mary, come forward. Mary, trembling, stepped into the circle. Poirot's voice was gentle, but commanding. Mademoiselle, you saw more than you told. The cyclist, the letter, and something else. Speak, or the truth will find you. Mary's eyes filled with tears. I saw Lady Blackwood in the hall. After I brought the master's tea, she was whispering with Monsieur Dubois. She gave him a letter to pass to that man outside. The room gasped. Lady Blackwood stood, her face pale but steady. Lies. I did no such thing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Madame, your calm betrays you. The little gray cells see it. You loved another. The cook hinted at your unhappiness. Blackwood's secrets threatened you. Perhaps a scandal. You used Dubois to arrange a meeting with the cyclist. A man hired to kill Holmes stepped in, his voice like steel. The cyclist shot Blackwood through the window, which you left unlatched. You reset it after, to make it seem locked. The thread from Dubois' coat caught under the desk when he helped you cover it up. Lady Blackwood laughed, sharp and brittle. Absurd. You have no proof. Holmes held up the glove. This belongs to the cyclist, hired by you. The cigarette, but cheap tobacco, not Dubois brand. But the man you paid. Thomas' footprint was a distraction. He was outside, but not the killer. Poirot turned to Dubois. You were her pawn, monsieur. She used your fear of scandal, perhaps your own secrets, to make you deliver the letter, confess, and save yourself. Dubois broke, his voice a sob. She made me do it. Blackwood was going to expose her affair with the minister. She said the cyclist would handle it. I didn't know he'd kill him. Lady Blackwood's face crumpled, her calm shattering. He deserved it, she hissed. He was cold, cruel, always plotting with those spies. He'd ruin me, ruin us all. Thomas shouted, you killed him. My uncle. He lunged, but Watson held him back. Lestrade stepped in, handcuffs ready. Lady Blackwood, you're under arrest. Dubois, you're coming too. The room fell silent, the weight of truth settling like dust. Mary sobbed quietly. Graves shook his head, stunned. The cook, watching from the corner, crossed herself. Holmes and Poirot stood side by side, their rivalry quiet for a moment. Holmes spoke low. Your maid was the key. Poirot, well played. Poirot bowed slightly. And your glove, Holmes, sealed the trap. The facts and the heart, they worked together. Nan. Watson and Hastings exchanged looks, relieved but amazed. They actually did it, Hastings whispered. Together, Watson added, grinning as Lestrade led Lady Blackwood and Dubois away. The manor seemed to exhale. The cyclist remained at large, but the murder was solved. The letters, seal, the lion and rose, hinted at a larger plot, but for now, the killer was caught. The chapter closed with Holmes and Poirot stepping outside, the fog lifting to reveal a clear sky. A fine puzzle, Holmes said, lighting his pipe. A fine mind, yours, Poirot replied, adjusting his hat. But the little gray cells, they have their charm. They parted, each knowing the admirer's challenge had tested them both and neither had failed. Chapter 6. The verdict. The sun hung low over London, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold. Blackwood Manor stood quiet, its secrets spilled, the weight of murder lifted, but not forgotten. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, Hercule Poirot, and Captain Hastings sat in a small cafe on a bustling street, far from the manor's grim walls. The air smelled of fresh coffee and warm bread, a sharp contrast to the fog and fear of the past days. The case was solved, but the challenge from the mysterious admirer lingered like a shadow. Holmes sipped black coffee, his sharp eyes scanning a newspaper. The headline screamed, "Blackwood Murder Solved. Detectives Triumph." He folded it neatly, his face calm but thoughtful. "The press loves a story," he said, voice low. "But they miss the details. Lady Blackwood's confession, Dubois' cowardice, it's all too tidy." Poirot, stirring sugar into his hot chocolate, nodded. "Oui, Monsieur Holmes. The heart of the case was clear betrayal, fear, a hired killer. But this admirer, the one who sent the letters with the Lion Andros seal, they remain hidden. Why challenge us? Watson leaned back, puffing his pipe. Maybe they just wanted to see you to squirm. Pitting the best against each other, Holmes' logic versus your, what do you call it, little gray cells. Hastings chuckled, setting down his tea. It worked, didn't it? You both solved it, but I'd say it was a draw. Holmes got the glove. Poirot got Mary to talk. Team effort, if you ask me. Holmes raised an eyebrow. A draw, Watson. My evidence, the thread, the latch, the cigarette butt pinned, the cyclist's roll. Facts closed the case. Poirot's mustache twitched, a small smile forming. Facts, monsieur, are but the frame. The heart marries fear. Lady Blackwood's lies gave the picture life. Without motive, your clues are just things. Watson and Hastings exchanged grins, used to the sparring. The cafe buzzed around them, waiters weaving through tables, plates clinking. Outside, horse carts rattled past motor cars, the city alive and noisy. A young boy approached, cap low, holding a tray with a single envelope. For Mr. Holmes and Mr. Poirot, he said, voice squeaky. He dropped it and darted off before anyone could ask questions. Holmes snatched the envelope, his fingers quick. It was thick, sealed with the familiar Lion Andros crest. Poirot leaned forward, eyes sharp. The admirer, he said softly. They watch us still. Holmes slid it open, pulling out a typed letter. He read aloud, his voice steady. To Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, masters of mind and heart. You have solved Blackwood's murder, as I knew you would. Lady Blackwood's betrayal, Dubois' weakness, the cyclist's gun-all, revealed by your genius. But the game was not the crown won better. It was to see you shine. I, a retired seeker of truth, salute you. The world is richer for your work. Signed, an admirer of genius. Watson frowned. Retired seeker of truth. Sounds like an old detective, stirring the pot for fun. Hastings nodded. Cheeky devil, setting you two against each other like that. But there right no winner. You both cracked it. Holmes set the letter down, his face unreadable. A test, then, not a trap, but a stage. They knew Blackwood's secrets, his ties to spies, the documents. They used us to expose the truth. Poirot sipped his chocolate, thoughtful, and yet, the cyclist escapes. A loose thread, Monsieur Holmes. The admirer knows more than they say. Holmes leaned forward, eyes glinting. Agreed. The cyclist is a hired man, likely tied to the crown in the letter. A larger plot espionage, perhaps a government scandal remains buried. But for now, the murder is solved. Poirot smiled, raising his cup. To justice, then, and to minds that meet, even in rivalry. Holmes' lips twitched, almost a smile. To justice, and two facts, which speak louder than motives. Watson laughed. You two will never agree, will you? Hastings grinned. Wouldn't be half as fun if they did. The conversation turned lighter, the weight of the case easing. Holmes admitted, quietly, your focus on the maid was clever, Poirot. Her fear broke the case open. Poirot bowed his head. And your glove, Holmes, trapped the truth. Your eye for detail is formidable. They stood, ready to leave. Holmes adjusted his coat, glancing at Poirot. If this admirer writes again, we may cross paths. I'd not mind it. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Nor I, monsieur. The little gray cells enjoy a challenge. As they stepped into the street, the city hummed around them. Watson and Hastings trailed behind, chatting like old friends. The letter lay on the table, a final note in their strange duet. The question of who's better hung unanswered, but it didn't matter. Holmes' logic and Poirot's heart had solved the crime, and justice stood tall. The cafe door swung shut, the Lion Andros seal glinting in the fading light. The game was over for now.